as you can see today, I have my laptop with me, and that's because I want to talk about a book that I realized was kind of an important book at some point in my life, but I totally forgot about it. Not because it wasn't good, but because I just kind of remember reading it in passing. So, for those of you who don't know, I am actually French American. I'm born French. I am only American by nationality. So, I spent my middle school and high school and some college years in France. This meant that I, A, didn't have access to a lot of American books, so I didn't read as much, because I didn't like a lot of French books. B, I also... Oh, it disconnected. That's okay. I'll get it back. Maybe. I don't know. Oh, it's back. Okay. This laptop's kind of crappy. Whatever. Moving on. So, I didn't read a lot of American books because there weren't a lot that were accessible without having to buy them. And at the time, ebooks were still kind of emerging, and I don't like ebooks. I'm a physical book kind of person. Anyways, I wasn't reading a lot. But I did remember that there was one book that I did read in the middle of my high school years. Mind you, my high school years were filled with a lot of French books, a lot of French classics, and I gotta tell ya, French classics in the original language, not that riveting, especially not when you're reading Madame Bovary. I hate that book with a burning passion. But I did read this amazing book called Les Thanatonautes, which I will put a picture somewhere of the cover. So I decided to look at it a little bit because, again, this was a very long time ago, but I remember the premise of it is basically it's these two guys who are scientists, although they consider themselves explorers, and they're exploring the unexplored continent, which is death, or the afterlife. They called it New Australia in the book, I remember that. And I remembered really liking a lot of the idea in the book and what happened. I don't remember so much the characters other than them bickering quite a bit, which I would too if I was in their type of line of work. I'll explain it a little bit later. But I do want to give a little bit of background. So, Les Thanatonautes, or the Thanatonautes in English, was written by Bernard Bernard Werber? It was written in 1994. It's a science fiction novel. It is French. There's actually no translation for it, so I guess I'm sorry. If you want to read it in French, though, feel free to. The only book that Bernard Werber actually has translated is a trilogy called Les Fourmis. I've never read that. I never read those books. But I did find out, something I didn't know, that Les Thanatonautes is actually the first in a 5-part series. This part was confusing. So, Les Thanatonautes is the first one. Then there's l'Empire des Anges, which is the Empire of Angels. And then there's Nous les Dieux, Us the Gods. And those make the Thanatonautes trilogy. Then there's another trilogy that's like linked with it, where it's Nous les Dieux, so Us the Gods. Then it's Le Souffle des Dieux, the breath of the gods. And then there's Le Mystère des Dieux, the mystery of the gods. So it's like 2 trilogies that go together where one book is actually shared in the trilogies. I did not know this when I read the book. I read Les Thanatonautes thinking it was a standalone. But, so I discovered that. I don't know if I'll end up reading the whole thing. I don't even know if I can find it, because, again, it's actually not translated. Which is fine, because I would want to read it in French anyway, since I read the first one in French in the first place. So, the whole premise of the book, and the reason I want to talk about it today, is because, if you don't know me already, I love everything that deals with death or with darker subjects, but in a way that it doesn't make it seem dark. The Thanatonautes, the book, it was around this entire idea of exploring the continent of death. Obviously, they have to die, and it's a very medical procedure, and it's a very careful process where they have to be able to come back. Otherwise, they can't, say what they discovered. So they have all this medical equipment and many people who are monitoring the person who is dead and who is exploring. And the way that they described the first step, or I don't even remember how they called it, but I guess it was like the first land and almost like levels, I guess. So the first level they described it as almost, I remember it being like going down a tunnel and an imagery of some kind of lifeline, but obviously they don't actually have one because it's not a physical place that they're going to, but there was a description of a lifeline and how they always had it, and they knew that if it was there they could come back. And every single level had a different type of like, you know how Freud talked about the different consciousnesses or whatever. There's like the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and then there was another one. But so this book was, again, it's the topic of death and exploration, science fiction, but it also had a lot of philosophical and a lot of psychological like topics and descriptions and events. And I remember really loving that book, especially at a time when I was a teenager. I was in high school, and high school in France is very different from in the US. You have a shit ton of work to do. It's college level, really. And it's exhausting. I had so many books to read. I was in the middle of not only adolescence and puberty, but also in the middle of trying to figure out who I am. And I remember that book had such a strong impact because it was this completely ridiculous idea of how like the afterlife is something that can be explored, and every single level has this different challenge, I guess, for the human mind, and especially if you go there not being dead, it's even more challenging. And I do remember the part that I loved the most was, I think he ends up in this long line. He's like, he gets there and he sees all these people in a line, and an angel comes to see him. Although I remember the angel saying like, oh, you call me angel, you call me all these other different things, like whatever. I'm just some dude who takes care of dead people. And he brought him, or he explained how the whole afterlife happens and how you can get resurrected, or not resurrected, oh my gosh. Reincarnated. How you can get reincarnated, but there are rules to being reincarnated. God, that took me forever to figure out the word. So the angel explains that there are many different ways of how you can get reincarnated, and even if you do get reincarnated, and it's all based on how much harm you've brought to the world and what good you've done in the world. And I just remembered the specific moment where they're taught, like the guy who is exploring the afterlife, he asks, he's like, oh, what happened to Hitler? And the angel says, oh, well, he turned into a bonsai tree. He's like, why would he turn into a bonsai tree? He's like, because a bonsai tree is in eternal torment. I was like, wow, that is rough. I had never thought about that before. I just thought it was really funny that was a part in the book. Anyways, all of this to say, I really do want to praise the book. I want to recommend it to anyone who can read in French or wants to read in French. If you can find a translated version, please let me know, because that would be really cool. And I think I might check out the rest of the series if I can find it in French. I know I'd probably have to buy them, but I'm going to try and see if I can borrow them from somewhere. Yeah. Anyways, Les Thanatonautes, great book. Have really good memories about it. Recommend it if you haven't read it. Recommend it if you can read in French. Recommend it if you can find it translated. I just remember really liking it. So that's it for today. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe, like, it helps me out. I also do have a Patreon, which I am setting up to have some exclusive vlogs every month and to have monthly polls on what I should read, what kind of video I should do, just a bunch of like live videos, things like that. So if you want to check that out and help support me do this, please check that out. I also have a bunch of other links down below. Check those out too. And I will see you next time. Bye.